The Chief Secretary of London, the Secretary for Finance and Enterprise Development, Assemblyman Joel Jack, and the Secretary with responsibility for Community Development and Culture, Councillor Denise Soyafat Angus, reported to the media this week at Post-Executive Council media briefing.
Earlier this week, the Secretary of Finance and I would have met with the Minister of Finance. I would just give you some general idea of what was discussed, and then Secretary Jack will provide the details. I think one of the things we wanted to put across to the Minister is the fact that when we present a budget in Tobago in June, it is not a wish list. In fact, this year's budget was premised on a number of actions, including consultations, a survey, etc. And therefore, the budget did in fact represent the demands, if you want to put it like that, of the people of Tobago and what is absolutely necessary for Tobago's development. We recognize that the Minister of Finance will have his constraints, and therefore one of the issues which we would have put on the table very early is the ministry's support for THA initiatives to fund development, whether it is sourcing loans, whether it is raising bonds, whether it is getting involved in the public-private partnership, whatsoever it is. We would have put on the table that we were requesting and expecting support from the ministry, knowing fully well that regardless of what we request, it is not only unlikely, it's almost impossible for us to get all that was requested. We also discussed the ministry's support for the tourism sector and a number of areas of concern raised by the business community in Tobago. The question of the loan guarantee program, which has not really brought the type of benefit to the Tobago business sector as it was wanted to be, and therefore that is one aspect that was discussed. The government incentive schemes and how that is going to impact on Tobago, if at all. And we also discussed some issues specifically related to other aspects of the tourism sector. For example, the whole question of the airport and the construction of a new airport. We know that there are plans to the refurbishment of the airport terminal, but we are aware that even with those repairs, the airport will still not meet the standard expected from most of the major airlines, and that will do little to attract new carriers or even to bring back or to encourage back carriers like Virgin Airlines. But I think one of the issues where we did get some traction from the Minister of Finance, in the same way as we got some traction from the Minister Cadiz the previous week, with respect to the linking of the Trinidad to Tobago air bridge from Caribbean Airlines. Our position is that we are in fact in the present system mixing two types of operations which are incompatible. That we are asking Caribbean Airlines to make a profit. But on the other hand, we are accepting the fact that the Trinidad Tobago air bridge has to be subsidized. And we are saying that this situation is untenable, it's unworkable, and it will create problems for both the central government and, of course, the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And our strong recommendation is that we return to a more efficient arrangement, which will entail that we have a separate airline running the bridge between Trinidad and Tobago, where we could deal with all the nuances. We could determine what level of subsidy. We could determine what is the best type of airplane, and we can ensure that it achieves the objectives with respect to bringing people between the two islands, ensuring comfort and predictability for the the people of the country, and also bringing much more benefit to the tourism sector, because we are convinced that if we have an efficient air bridge, there will be millions, tens of millions of dollars worth of benefit to the tourism sector. And I am heartened by the response of the Minister of Finance, just as I was heartened by the response of the Minister Keelys, and I'm looking forward to a statement in this year's budget coming from the Minister. We also spoke to the Minister about commitments that were not made, commitments made in the last budget which were not met, and among them was the commitment for the construction of police stations at Roxborough and Old Grange. This has been on the drawing board for the longest while. As you know, it was a fait accompli under the previous administration, but it was taken. That process was abandoned, and to date we still have not seen anything substantial emanating. At the end of the meeting, we also made a decision, and I got in touch with the Minister of Planning, because as you realize, this is an exercise, a budget exercise, although a lot of people think it is. It's not just about the Minister of Finance. The Minister of Planning has to come into it. And we did, although he was out of the country, I spoke to him, and he has agreed to meet with us within the next week or two, so that we should be able to meet with him and deal with the development side of the budget, because you all are aware that our biggest problem is on the development side of the budget. So Secretary Jack will give you some of the details, but I just want to just speak to two other issues. As I mentioned, we did have a meeting with Minister Keelys to discuss the question of the cargo vessel. It is now making the trip between Tobago and Trinidad, and the minister did give assurance that he will be looking at a replacement vessel for the older of the fast ferries, which is now 17 years old, 2 years past what is considered to be the lifespan of a vessel with that kind of hull. And he has committed to leading the thrust towards the purchase of a new vessel. Of course, we will have to have some determination as to what will be the configuration with respect to size, with respect to the use of fuel, etc. But again, we had some very interesting discussions, and I think very comforting discussions with respect to that. I had a very interesting meeting with the members of the committee set up to make recommendations on the regulation of betting and gaming in Trinidad and Tobago. That committee was set up some months ago to look into this very controversial issue and to find a balanced response to all the concerns raised on both sides. The Tobago House of Assembly is represented on that committee by former Secretary Oswald Williams, and they gave us a preliminary report, and we were able to make some recommendations, especially with respect to Tobago. We made the point that, as in most other issues, Tobago cannot be treated as just an appendage of Trinidad. We are a small society. We have a different type of culture. We are a society that is, to a certain extent, dependent on tourism and all the advantages and challenges of that. And in those circumstances, there are certain issues that we would have put on the table. For example, you know, whether we should control the total number rather than having a free-for-all where, as long as you qualify, you can come into the island. You know, the question of location and a number of other issues which we put on the table with respect to how we saw the Tobago situation, which in some cases is different from that of Trinidad. So we look forward to the draft bill, and of course we expect that the public will be given the opportunity to look at it.
Let me begin by stating that last Monday's meeting that was held with the Minister of Finance was held in the usual cordial manner as we have done over the years. And of course, we can only hope that when the budget is read in the next couple of months that it will reflect those discussions. And the discussion centered around the 2015 budget request of $5.8 billion. And I believe everyone in Tobago might be familiar with the salient details of the budget. We made the point to the minister that, and as the Chief Secretary rightly said, that this was not a wish list, but these numbers, they were derived from extensive consultations with the various stakeholders, as well as a pre-budget survey that was undertaken in Tobago. Additionally, the budget is anchored on the Comprehensive Economic Development Plan for Tobago, CDP 2.0, and it comes out of the mandate and the wishes of the people of Tobago. We reiterated to the minister that any compromise, any significant shortfall could compromise our delivery and the pace of development on the island. We pointed out to the minister that in 2013, the shortfall was significant on the development program side of over $1.54 billion, or 81% of the requests submitted by the Assembly, and 29.5% on the recurrent side of over $877.2 million. And some of those figures in terms of important areas such as funding, the lack of funding for the expansion of Cove, as well as funding to the tourism rolling plan, as well as the senior citizens grant, amounted, provided a challenge for the Assembly this year. And as a result, we indicated to the minister that as a result of that, the Assembly took a position to have what we have called the second budget, where we were forced to revise our projections and reduce recurrent expenditure, reprioritize our projects, and in order to treat with the shortfall, which totaled over 50% in last year's budget. We also raised the issue with the minister of the need to explore alternative funding mechanisms. And we placed them on the table again. And again, we did not find favor with the minister for all of them. But however, we reiterated to the minister the need to revisit the computation of the dispute resolution formula. We may recall that under this formula, the assemblies consistently allocated the minimum 4.03% of the national budget, which is in defiance to a promise that was made by the Honorable Prime Minister sometime early in January 2013, of a promise of an allocation, the maximum possible between 6 to 8%. We reminded the minister of this promise, as well as the recommendations tabled in the DRC, which suggested that in order to facilitate development in Tobago, the allocation should be closer to 6 to 9%, between 6 to 9% in order to accelerate Tobago's development. We also reminded the minister of the need for continuous collaboration and discussion, and for us to have discussions. You may recall that recently the Minister of Finance returned to the National Parliament for additional funds over and above the funds approved and allocated in the 2014 budget. Another important issue that we raised with the minister is we face a perennial problem since January 2013 of the late collection of releases from the Ministry of Tobago Development. This has been occurring since January 2013, and it poses more than an inconvenience. It results in lost interest income and at times has increased the cost of doing business with the Assembly because currently we have to rely on our overdraft facility to take care of recurrent expenditure. And this was an issue that we raised in the past with the minister, and he has agreed to look into it. As we speak, the current tranche for the last quarter, July to September, is late and is also in breach of the Tobago House of Assembly Act. As the Chief mentioned earlier, we also raised the issue of the need to pursue alternative financing mechanisms. And again, we tabled the need for public-private partnerships and the need for the Minister of Finance to float a Tobago Development Bond. With respect to the public-private partnerships, the Minister was in agreement and pledged his support for the Tobago House of Assembly and the Ministry of Finance to continue working together to ensure the effective rollout of a public-private partnership unit on the island. We also raised the issue with the Milshove appeal, and the Minister indicated that he attempted to liaise with the Attorney General prior to coming into the meeting, and he will give us an update on the direction that is taken within the next couple of months. A major part of the meeting was centered on discussions around revenue collection in Tobago. You may recall I made mention of the fact that the revenue generated in Tobago is not collected on the island. And there are several firms which operate in Tobago who paid taxes in Trinidad. And I made a point as well in the 2015 budget statement that the portion of those taxes which accrue to firms having operations in Tobago should form part of Tobago's revenue base. I keep making the point, and as a point I'll make consistently, that we face severe shortfalls on the development program side, and we don't get the necessary funding. For example, and this is more glaring in the case of housing, how do we treat with the over 7,000 housing applications that we have on the books, that we have before the Tobago House of Assembly, and in light of the allocation that we received this year to fund housing development on the island? I think the funding this year was approximately $20 million. So we asked the Minister to give priority to issues related to housing and to review the allocation. We also made mention of the need for allocation for the Roxborough Administrative Complex, to decentralize the Tobago House of Assembly and government services to the east of Tobago, the construction of the Scarborough RC School, funding for Cove, EID cut, and Cove is pivotal to the island's diversifications effort, and last year Cove received zero funding. Additionally, we made the case for the financial assistance program or tertiary education program, as well as the construction of the education administrative complex, as well as funding for CPEP and URP. We also made a special appeal for the tourism sector, and especially in the area with respect to the implementation of the government's loan guarantee program, and as we have, and prior to our meeting, I spoke to the president of the Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, and they lamented the issues surrounding this loan guarantee program. And Tobago businesses have not been able to access these funds despite the promise that we received in the last 3 budget statements. We again raised the issue with the Minister of Finance about the need to have representation on boards, because some of the issues that we're treating with as it relates to the Tobago economy, if the Tobago House of Assembly was represented on the board, some of the issues coming to the fore would have been taken care of. as we spoke specifically about the Central Bank Board and the issue that we're having with respect to the foreign exchange issue. We also express our concerns with an issue that I may have discussed the last time I was here, with the new procurement legislation and the fact that 2 sections of the Tobago House of Assembly Act was repealed. And in fact, it was repealed without consultation with the Assembly, and the minister indicated that you know, the need to sit and have further dialogue on the issue. We also inquired about the current status of the new legislation for credit unions, and we highlighted the importance of credit unions to the Tobago environment, and we need to have an update. The minister informed us that the bill will be taken to Parliament sometime shortly.
I would like to take us back a little bit towards the end of June to discuss Tobago fashion in Jamaica, where I would have led a delegation to the Caribbean Fashion Week 2014 in Kingston, Jamaica, with a twofold objective. One, to give exposure to our local designers on the island, and we would have taken 4 clothing designers and 2 with accessories, and they showcased very well. The audience there was very excited at the pieces that they would have portrayed in that event, and I believe they have made a number of contacts, not just in Jamaica, but others who would have visited from outside of Jamaica. This month, or earlier this month, it was Community Development Week, but in Tobago we actually celebrated a month-long of activities, and a number of programs were executed throughout the month in celebrating this special part of our mandate. And therefore we would have celebrated men through our program called Macho Men, and that is really about focusing on the development of men, their financial health, their physical health, and spiritually. The Girls Talk, also we would have had a program at Betsy's Hope, again talking to the young women, young girls about, you know, their future as women and their health. And of course the I Am Woman program that we would have recently held. The festival this year is costing about 13 million, and we have added 1 new show for the year. And I say year because it's not just about the 2-week season anymore. We have the 2-week festival and the year-round experience. And so the whole activity for the year will be 13 million. I have been assured in the last meeting last Wednesday by the Board of Commissioners and the Heritage Festival Committee that all is well and that we will have an exciting opening event.
Thank you for tuning in to another Tobago House of Assembly's Post-Executive Council media briefing for the week ending July 19th, 2014.